Varlun 7 had never seen a fire before. The Galactic Union prided itself on efficiency and redundancy, ensuring that every station was designed to function with precise, calculated perfection. There were systems in place, safeguards layered. Over safeguards, algorithms that could predict failures decades in advance. And yet, as an inferno raged through the central operations deck, reducing control panels to slag and warping the once sterile metal walls, it became painfully obvious that no one had planned for this. Everyone trembled in fear. Everyone except the human firefighter. Elena Reyes tightened her grip on the nearest console as the deck shuddered violently. The alarm system shrieked in panicked, multilingual warnings, cycling through tones that only made the alien crew more hysterical. Remain calm. Galactic Union Emergency Protocol dictates that. Commander Zelveth's voice cut off as an overhead conduit burst, sending a gout of flame across the bridge. He leapt backward, his 6 limbs tangling, his deep blue exoskeleton flashing, a warning hue of pale yellow. Elena barely glanced at him as she swung her emergency pack off her shoulder. "Yeah, sure, dictates. Too bad your protocol doesn't include fire extinguishers." Zelveth's compound eyes locked onto her. "Fire is not supposed to happen. This station has never—" "Yeah, I got that part," she muttered, yanking a nozzle free. She sprayed down the nearest burning panel with a jet of fire suppressant. The foam hissed against the superheated metal, thick vapor curling toward the ceiling vents. The air tasted like scorched circuitry and desperation. Behind her, the rest of the bridge crew dissolved into various states of alien distress. The Varshik, communications officer, curled into a defensive ball, their chitinous plates rattling with each shudder. A reptilian Senva engineer clung to the ceiling with all 4 limbs, eyes darting wildly. Another crew member, whose species name Elena, hadn't even learned yet, simply detached a limb in sheer panic. The limb twitched on the floor. Elena ground her teeth. "You're all this bad in a crisis?" A timid voice to her left piped up. "Technically, the Galactic Union Survival Manual recommends submission to chaos until—" She whipped around. To face Lemna, a translucent, gelatinous life form whose bioluminescence pulsed in what Elena was learning to recognize as nervousness. "Until what, exactly?" Lemna hesitated, then quivered slightly. "Until a higher authority resolves the situation." Elena let out a sharp laugh, shaking her head. "Well, great news. I am the higher authority now." Zelveth spluttered. "You most certainly are not." She jabbed a gloved finger at him. "Are you putting out the fire?" A long pause. The commander's antennae twitched. "No." "Then shut up and let me work." The flames had spread too fast, unreasonably fast. That worried her. Fire in space wasn't like fire planetside. It behaved differently, hungrily, as if it knew it wasn't supposed to exist here. She toggled a nearby panel, scanning emergency schematics. The primary suppression system was offline. Of course it was. "Elena!" Fisk, the station's chief engineer, swung into view, his 4 arms scrambling to hold onto a melting overhead support beam. He was a short, wiry creature covered in thick gray fur, and he looked positively thrilled despite their impending doom. "This is incredible. You humans just do things in a crisis? No pre-approved response scripts?" "I don't know, Fisk. Does screaming count as a response script?" She shot back, dousing another burning section of the wall. "Not usually." He grinned, eyes glinting with unhinged enthusiasm. "What's the plan?" "Plan is to not die." "Solid. I like it." Zelveth's mandibles clicked sharply. "This is not how protocol operates." "Then change the protocol," Elena snapped. She pointed at the main console, where flames licked dangerously close to what she hoped wasn't the station's primary power relay. "We need containment before the fire spreads to the core. Can we vent the affected sections?" Fisk made a face. "Sort of, but also no." Elena groaned. Explain. Well, the plasma storm outside kind of fried the station's fail-safes. If we vent, we risk decompressing the entire deck. And, us. The Senva engineer on the ceiling hissed. I dislike that outcome. Elena pinched the bridge of her nose. All right, then we do this manually. Zelveth straightened. And what does manually entail? She grinned. It wasn't a comforting grin. You ever used a fire hose, Commander? In the end, it took too much effort, but they managed to beat the fire back. It was sloppy, chaotic, and full of improvised solutions that would make any self-respecting Galactic Union officer faint on principle. But it worked. The bridge was a scorched mess, and half the equipment was unusable, but they were alive. Zelveth, to his credit, had actually helped, albeit with constant grumbling. Fisk had somehow rigged up a pressure differential that redirected oxygen flow, suffocating the flames in the most absurdly convoluted way possible. Limna had managed to calm the more delicate crew members by relaying oddly specific human survival stories, citing something called MacGyver as her primary source of inspiration. But before anyone could so much as catch their breath, the proximity alarms blared. The overhead display flickered, revealing an ominous, fast-approaching silhouette against the plasma storm's fiery backdrop. Elena didn't recognize the ship, but from the way the crew immediately lost their collective minds, she figured it wasn't the friendly type. Zelveth's exoskeleton flashed a deep, terrified red. Dravka Raiders! Elena exhaled, slowly. Fantastic! What's their protocol? Zelveth's mandibles clattered weakly. Survival through compliance. Elena slumped against the nearest wall. Of course it is. Fisk clapped his hands together. So, new plan? Elena glanced at the charred remnants of the bridge, at the still-smoking walls, at the exhausted, terrified crew, and then at the incoming raider ship, which was undoubtedly very excited about their current predicament. She pushed off the wall and cracked her knuckles. Yeah, she said. I've got one. As the Dravka Raiders vessel loomed ever closer, its jagged silhouette cutting through the swirling plasma storm, the atmosphere aboard Varloon 7 grew increasingly tense. The station's crew, still reeling from the recent fire, now faced an even more formidable threat. Elena Reyes, the human firefighter who had taken charge during the crisis, stood at the center of the bridge, her mind racing. The Dravka were notorious for their ruthlessness, and standard Galactic Union protocols offered little hope against such adversaries. Commander Zelveth, his exoskeleton now a deep shade of anxious purple, approached her cautiously. Human Reyes, what course of action do you propose? Elena glanced around at the diverse crew. Fisk, the enthusiastic engineer, Limna, the bioluminescent communicator, and the others, each with unique skills yet paralyzed by fear. An idea began to form, a plan as audacious as it was unorthodox. All right, listen up, everyone, she began, her voice steady. We're going to improvise. Fisk's eyes lit up with curiosity. Improvise? Yes. Elena nodded. We're going to make them think twice about boarding us. Limna's glow flickered with uncertainty. But how? By turning this station into something they're not expecting, Elena replied, a determined glint in her eye. Fisk, can you rig the external lights to create a strobe effect? Something disorienting? Fisk's fur bristled with excitement. Absolutely. I can reroute the power from non-essential systems. Good. Limna, I need you to broadcast a series of random high-frequency signals. Make it sound like we're losing it. Limna's color shifted to a contemplative. Hui, I can modulate our communication array to emit erratic patterns. Perfect. And Commander, she turned to Zelveth, I need you to prepare the crew for a lot of noise and chaos. We're going to make this place look and sound as uninviting as possible. Zelveth's antennae twitched in apprehension. This is highly irregular. Irregular is our only shot, Alina countered. The Dravka expect an easy target. Let's make them think we're more trouble than we're worth. As the crew hurried to implement Alina's plan, the station transformed. Lights flickered erratically, alarms blared in dissonant tones, and the hull vibrated with unsettling frequencies. To an outsider, Varloon 7 now resembled a derelict vessel on the brink of madness. The Dravka ship halted its approach, seemingly taken aback by the chaotic display. Moments stretched into an agonizing eternity as the crew awaited the raiders' next move. Finally, the Dravka vessel veered away, disappearing into the plasma storm. A collective sigh of relief swept through the bridge. "They bought it," Fisk murmured in disbelief. "For now," Elena cautioned, "but we need to be ready. They might come back." Zelveth regarded her with newfound respect. "Your unconventional methods have proven effective, human Reyes. Sometimes thinking outside the box is the best protocol," she replied with a faint smile. As the crew began restoring in the aftermath of their successful ruse, Varloon 7's crew worked tirelessly to restore the station to its former state. Alina Reyes, the human firefighter whose quick thinking had averted disaster, found herself increasingly integrated into the daily operations. Her presence had become a beacon of resilience, inspiring the diverse crew to embrace unconventional solutions. One morning, as the artificial light simulated dawn, Elena joined Fisk in the engineering bay. The engineer's fur rippled with concentration as he calibrated a series of holographic displays. "Morning, Fisk." Fisk looked up, his whiskers twitching in greeting. "Ah, Elena. Perfect timing. I was just about to run diagnostics on the external sensors. Need a hand?" "Always." As they worked side by side, Elena couldn't help but notice a subtle tension in Fisk's usually buoyant demeanor. "Something on your mind?" Fisk hesitated, his ears flattening slightly. "It's just the Dravka. They retreated too easily." "You think they'll be back?" "I fear they might." Elena nodded thoughtfully. "Then we'll be ready." Meanwhile, in the communication hub, Limna monitored the subspace channels. Her bioluminescent skin pulsed with rhythmic patterns as she deciphered incoming transmissions. A sudden, irregular signal caught her attention. A series of coded pulses unlike any standard communication. "Commander Zelveth," she called, her glow intensifying. Zelveth approached, his exoskeleton reflecting the ambient light. "What have you found, Limna?" "Anomalous transmission on a restricted frequency. It doesn't match any known signatures." As Limna worked, the station's lights flickered. A brief, almost imperceptible dimming. In the medical bay, Dr. Tarek, a meticulous and reserved physician, noticed his instruments momentarily lose power. "Curious," he muttered, making a note to investigate later. Back in engineering, Elena and Fisk completed the diagnostics. "All systems nominal," Fisk reported, though his tone lacked its usual enthusiasm. "Good to hear," Elena replied, clapping him on the back. "Let's grab some food." As they headed to the mess hall, the station's intercom crackled to life. "Attention all personnel. This is Commander Zelveth. We have detected an unidentified transmission. All departments are to report any anomalies immediately." Elena exchanged a glance with Fisk. "Looks like things are about to get interesting." Throughout Varloon 7, the crew remained vigilant, each member contributing their expertise to unravel the mystery. Despite their diverse backgrounds, a sense of unity had begun to permeate the station, a testament to the adaptability and creativity that Elena had inspired. As the day progressed, minor malfunctions became more frequent. Doors jammed, environmental, controls fluctuated, and communication channels experienced intermittent disruptions. In the command center, Zelveth convened a meeting with key personnel. "We are facing an unknown threat," he began, his voice steady. "Suggestions?" Fisk spoke up. "It could be a cyber intrusion. Perhaps the Dravka left behind a malicious code." "Possible," Limna added. "But the transmission doesn't match Dravka encryption." Elena leaned forward. "Regardless of its origin, we need to isolate the source. Fisk, can you run a comprehensive systems scan?" "Already on it." "Limna, continue monitoring for any further transmissions." "Understood." "And, Commander," Elena turned to Zelveth, "we should prepare for the possibility of an internal saboteur." Zelveth's antennae twitched. "Agreed. Security protocols will be heightened." As the crew dispersed to their duties, Elena couldn't shake a growing unease. The station felt different, an undercurrent of tension that hadn't been there before. Later, as she patrolled the corridors, she encountered Dr. Tarek. "Dr. Tarek, have you noticed anything unusual in the medical bay?" "Minor power fluctuations," he replied. "Nothing critical, but concerning nonetheless." "Keep me informed of any changes." "Of course." As Elena continued her rounds, the station's lights flickered again, casting long shadows. The crew of Varloon 7 had faced numerous challenges, but the recent anomalies had them on edge. Elena Reyes, the human firefighter, had become a linchpin in their efforts to maintain order. In the command center, Commander Zelveth convened a meeting with key personnel. "Our situation is deteriorating," he began, his voice resonating through the chamber. "We need solutions." Fisk, the station's engineer, adjusted his visor. "I've run diagnostics on all systems. The anomalies don't match any known patterns." Lemna, the communications officer, interjected. "I've detected intermittent signals, but they're encrypted beyond our current capabilities." Elena leaned forward. "Could it be an external threat?" Zelveth's antennae twitched. "It's possible. We need to be prepared for any eventuality." As the meeting adjourned, Elena approached Fisk. "Let's check the external sensors. Maybe we missed something." Together, they navigated the labyrinthine corridors to the engineering bay. Fisk accessed the sensor array, his fingers dancing over the controls. "There!" Elena pointed to a faint blip on the display. "What is that?" Fisk magnified the image. "It appears to be a cloaked vessel." "The Dravka?" "Unlikely. Their cloaking technology isn't this advanced." Elena's mind raced. "We need to inform the commander." Back in the command center, Zelveth listened intently as Elena and Fisk presented their findings. "We must assume hostile intent," Zelveth concluded. "Prepare the station's defenses." As the crew mobilized, Elena found herself in the armory, inspecting the station's limited arsenal. She selected a plasma rifle, its weight unfamiliar but reassuring. The station's lights dimmed as the external threat drew closer. Elena took her position at a strategic choke point, her senses heightened. The first breach came without warning. Alien entities, unlike any the crew had encountered, poured into the station. Their forms were amorphous, shifting and undulating. Elena's training kicked in. She fired controlled bursts, the plasma rounds searing through the intruders. Around her, the crew fought valiantly, each member contributing their unique skills. Despite their efforts, the aliens advanced. Elena's rifle overheated, forcing her to retreat. She regrouped with Fisk and Lemna in the engineering bay. "We can't hold them off forever," Fisk panted, his fur matted with sweat. "We need to find a way to disable their ship," Lemna suggested. Elena's eyes lit up. "What if we overload the station's core? The resulting energy surge could disable their systems." "It's risky," Fisk warned. "We could destroy the station." "Do we have a choice?" With grim determination, they set to work. Fisk rerouted power conduits, while Limna transmitted false data to the alien ship, buying them precious time. Elena monitored the intruder's progress, her heart pounding. "They're almost here." "Just a little longer," Fisk muttered, his hands a blur over the controls. The door buckled under the force of the alien's assault. Elena braced herself, ready to make a final stand. "Now!" Fisk shouted. Elena slammed her hand on the activation panel. The station's core pulsed, sending a shockwave through the structure. The aliens convulsed, their forms destabilizing before collapsing into inert masses. The crew held their breath, waiting. "It worked," Limna whispered. Elena exhaled, her body sagging with relief. "We did it." In the aftermath, the crew assessed the damage. The station had sustained significant harm, but it was salvageable. Commander Zelvet addressed the crew. "We faced an unprecedented threat and emerged victorious. Our unity and resilience have seen us through." Elena looked around at her comrades, pride swelling in her chest. "Together, we can overcome anything." As they set to work repairing the station, a sense of hope permeated the air. They had faced the unknown and triumphed, their bonds stronger than ever. And so, aboard Varloon 7, life continued, the crew ever vigilant, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead.